Yu-Gi-Oh! I am sure that most of my audience has at the very least heard of this franchise before. Most of you will also remember it as that one show with the extremely wacky, pretty much impossible hairstyles where people were just far too serious about children's card games. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is one of those shows from my childhood that just really stuck with me, which is pretty evident through the fact that I still play Yu-Gi-Oh! To this day and have spent a bit too much money on funding this little hobby of mine from time to time. So I got a little creative and wanted to find a way to include this franchise into the X vs Dragon Ball series I host on this channel. After debating on how I was going to actually do this, I decided on a fun and creative method of making this concept actually work. So without further delays, let's just get into the gist of the video with a little backstory on the franchise of Yu-Gi-Oh! Itself.
It's time to duel!
Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a Japanese manga series written and illustrated by Kazuki Takahashi, which began appearing as a regular feature in the Shonen Jump magazine starting from 1996 and is still ongoing to this day. The series was pretty soon animated and began airing all over the world on the most watched cartoon or anime channels. Like I said before, it is nearly impossible for someone over the age of 18 to not have at least heard of Yu-Gi-Oh! In some fashion. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is currently, as of now, comprised of 8 major seasons. In chronological order, those series would be Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters GX, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V, Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. Each one of these series introducing new mechanics to the actual physical card game that accompanies the franchise. In this video, we will be discussing on the protagonist from the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, Yugi Moto, or to be more precise, the spirit of the pharaoh which resides in Yugi's Millennium Puzzle. To start things off, I will have to immediately start with a disclaimer, because this video is obviously heavily speculative and is just meant to be a fun video to think about. The way Yu-Gi-Oh! Works is by default pretty incomparable to most other anime, especially something like actual fighting with Dragon Ball. If I were to just take the pharaoh and toss his skinny ass in the Dragon Ball verse and ask him to fistfight the farmer with a shotgun, he would get his nose broken. That would be incredibly unfair of me, but it would also be pretty funny, so just keep that scenario in your mind. That's probably the realistic scenario that would happen. But that begs the question, how am I actually going to scale this guy to the Dragon Ball verse? I have actually looked at every single card Yugi uses in the anime and handpicked a list of them and tried to translate their effects into properly interacting with the Dragon Ball universe. So for the sake of this video, I will assume Yugi can just play whatever card he wants at whatever moment. Once again though, this video is most likely not going to be accurate, so don't take it too seriously. This is just about having a good time being creative, so don't get your panties in a bunch, yeah? So I was able to pick a total of 38 cards which I think would be able to help Yugi in surviving the Dragon Ball universe. They are categorized in 3 main categories, being spells, traps, and monsters. To start things off, let's just take a look at the monsters which really stood out to me as being potentially useful in his battle through the Dragon Ball universe. To start things off, let's look at Yugi's ace monster and probably his most recognizable card, the Dark Magician, and his apprentice, the Dark Magician Girl. The flavor text on Dark Magician reads as follows: the ultimate wizard in terms of attack and defense. Dark Magician is, as the name implies, obviously a user of magic, which can be pretty effective in the early stages of Dragon Ball. Illusions and tricks have shown to outsmart the cast on multiple occasions before, so I do believe it would be useful. The offensive power of both Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl is also shown to be on the higher end of just Yu-Gi-Oh! Monsters in general. Next up, we have the Silent Swordsman and the Silent Magician. The Silent Magician has the ability to be unaffected by the opponent's spells, and the Silent Swordsman has the ability to completely nullify the effects of all spells on the field. Now, I thought about how I would define cards with effects like this. The term spell is something pretty exclusive to Yu-Gi-Oh! And a truly similar thing does not really exist within Dragon Ball that would be like a one-to-one comparison. I have ultimately chosen to treat cards with effects like Silent Magician or Silent Swordsman as having the ability to negate key or key-based attacks. So, for example, Silent Magician is unaffected by spell effects would become Silent Magician is unaffected by key attacks. I know this is probably a stretch, but I found this to be an interesting way to combine the two franchises and honestly give Yugi more of a fighting chance, because like I said at the beginning of this video, this is not meant to be taken too seriously. Like, it's probably a very big reach, but I thought it would just be fun to make, you know? The next set of monsters are Gandora, the Dragon of Destruction, and Gandora X, the Dragon of Destruction. Both of these dragons have the ability to destroy every other another monster in play and power up whilst doing so. Now, obviously, I don't want to say that Yugi summoning Gandora would just insta-kill everyone. That sounds a tad bit unrealistic if you ask me. Instead, I would say summoning Gandora or having something with a similar effect would either just damage the enemies or weaken them in some fashion. Even if we don't count this as an insta-kill effect, it would still be a powerful play to be able to make in combination with another card. Yugi also has Kuribo, which could be used to negate any incoming attack once. Other than him, he has several monsters which are just powerful enough in like a blanket sense that I would consider them to be a possible threat. We have Summon Skull, which has the same offensive power as Dark Magician and also has lore-wise full control over the power of lightning. We have Valkyrion the Magna Warrior, the Blue Eyes White Dragon, the Black Luster Soldier, Gaia the Dragon Champion, Dark Paladin, Sorcerer of Dark Magic, and Dragon Master Knight, who all boast strong offensive powers, with some of them also having the ability of flight, which could prove useful in the earlier parts of Dragon Ball when not everybody could just fly willy-nilly. The true power of his monsters comes in the form of his 3 Egyptian god cards. Slifer the Sky Dragon, which becomes stronger the more cards Yugi keeps in his hand, Obelisk the Tormentor, who boasts just incredible offense and defense in general, and the Winged Dragon of Ra, which can use Yugi's very life energy to increase his strength to the absolute limit. All 3 of these cards are pretty much the strongest of the strongest when it comes to the anime and the manga. These cards are essentially ancient Egyptian gods incarnate, and it was even said that they could destroy the very world if the duelist using them lost control of them. Each of these cards could technically be skilled to planetary level if you take into account their abilities and lore, but Yugi has one more ace monster up his sleeve. If he manages to gather all 5 pieces of the puzzle and call forth Exodia, he could theoretically defeat any opponent you throw against him. You see, Exodia has the following ability. If you have right leg of the Forbidden One, left leg of the Forbidden One, right arm of the Forbidden One, and left arm of the Forbidden One in addition to this card in your hand, you win the duel. This would basically be translated to, if you have all 5 pieces of Exodia in play, Exodia comes forth and defeats your opponent without fail. In the anime, Exodia is shown to be able to match the Egyptian gods in terms of power and even held off the Dark Lord Zork. Aside from the monster cards, Yugi also uses spell and trap cards. Let's just take a look at some of his best spell cards next. The first spell card I wanted to cover was Brain Control. This card just straight up takes control of an opponent. This would allow Yugi to pitch enemies against each other whilst he gathers more cards for his next moves. It's a good stall card. Another card called Change of Heart does basically the same thing, just having 2 options for pitting your opponents against each other is always a good ace in the hole to have. Yugi also has a spell card called Dark Hole, which states, destroy all monsters on the field. I will treat this card in the same way I treated the Gandora cards, as to where I won't make it say that it will just kill the enemies, but it will just weaken them instead. An interesting tech option for Yugi is his Defusion spell card. This spell basically undoes fusions in the trading card game itself. So you have a fusion monster that is controlled by you or your opponent, you activate Defusion, and the fusion monster is forced to return to its unfused parts. Like, 2 monsters combined into one, Defusion will grab the 1 monster and make it 2 monsters again. So I will just literally make this card do the exact same thing in Dragon Ball, where it will just undo any fusion it encounters. Spoiler alert, he won't encounter any fusions, but it's fun to mention that he could theoretically, disable a fusion. It's just a fun thing. But another powerful spell in Yugi's arsenal is Soul Taker. This spell could be used to weaken an enemy and recover some of his own strength whilst doing so. Next up, we have Swords of Revealing Light. This spell card offers Yugi a sort of blanket protection from basically any free attacks the enemy would throw at him. It is the perfect card to just buy him some guaranteed time to gather more cards from his deck to make a counterplay. And finally, for the spells, we have Thousand Knives. This spell is a bit harder to pull off since he needs to use it in combination with his Dark Magician. He has to have Dark Magician in play to activate Thousand Knives. But because of this added restriction, I will treat this card's effect as a true instant kill on any desired enemy, but he would need RNG to actually have both Dark Magician and Thousand Knives, and the enemy would have to not dodge it, So I think it's fine to just give this one an instant kill effect. I don't think it would really change things too much. But with these spells out of the way, let's take a quick look at the last category of cards Yugi uses, trap cards. First off, we have the trap card Magical Hats. This trap card would create 4 hats where Yugi hides under one of them. The hats would then shuffle and give Yugi essentially a 3 in 4 chance of dodging an enemy attack trying to hit him. Next up, we have Magic Cylinder. This trap card is just pretty powerful in general because it reflects an enemy's attack right back at them with full power. A perfect counterplay against techniques like, let's say, the Gala Gun or the Destructo Disc. It would just flick them back at the user. Yugi also has the trap card Mirror Force, which would cancel out an enemy attack and just damage all enemies with the force of said attack. Once again, having this card just instantly kill every enemy just sounds unrealistic to me, so I will be treating it the same way as Gandora and Dark Hole. The next trap card is called Mystical Ref Panel. This card allows Yugi to change the attack target of a key-based attack from himself to another participant in the battle. And lastly, for his trap cards, he has the Spellbinding Circle, which is pretty simple but effective in that it would just entrap its target and render them just completely unable to move or attack. Please do note that the aforementioned cards in all categories are not the only cards Yugi has used throughout the series. Consider visiting the Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki link I left in the description down below to see the complete roster of cards used by Yugi throughout the entire manga and anime. I just selected the cards I found particularly interesting to use for this video. So with all of these cards to help him out, Yugi has quite the arsenal of offense and defense to aid him in his battles. But how far would his prize trading cards actually get my boy in the Dragon Ball verse with like my rules for this video? Like I said before, lore-wise, several of his cards are actually capable of destroying the planet. Do note that this would likely be a more long-term event where they just slowly destroy everything in their path, not just where they blow it up in one attack. Because I don't think that would be accurate of me to say. Like, I haven't seen any evidence that they could just punch the planet and it would break. I honestly think that with the power of his cards, Yugi could blitz through Dragon Ball itself pretty easily. The likes of the Red Ribbon Army have absolutely nothing on Summon Skull, like just saying. Even DKP is going to lose to the likes of, like, let's say Dragon Master Knight or something. The troubling part is whether or not Yugi's monsters could defeat Raditz. Personally, I believe they could. The 3 Egyptian gods and Exodia would pound the ever-living shit out of Raditz, but I can definitely see the argument that, you know, they couldn't. Like, I'm not going to be stuck up and be just completely blind to that scenario because, let's be honest, it's probably realistic. You honestly could also just probably talk me into them being able to nail Nappa too, but I sadly don't really believe that they could beat Vegeta on their own. Meaning that the Egyptian god cards on their own would not be able to beat Vegeta, at least I don't believe so. But we do have to consider Yugi's absolutely busted spell and trap cards. He could just easily use Magical Ref Panel to redirect an attack Vegeta uses to Nappa and beat Nappa with that. Then he could use cards like Dark Hole and Magic Cylinder to counter Vegeta's attacks and weaken him in the process. Once weakened enough, I think his barrage of monsters could beat Vegeta with some luck involved. However, as we all know, characters get progressively faster and stronger the deeper we get in Dragon Ball. The next villain after Vegeta would be the Doria, who was slightly stronger than Vegeta. Then you had Zarbon, who was slightly stronger than the Doria. But then we just get Captain Ginyu, who is leagues above Zarbon ever was. Even with all the luck in the world, I just don't see a way Yugi's combination of monsters, spells and traps would be able to defeat the just fabulous Captain Ginyu. I can just picture this event in my head where Captain Ginyu would just quite literally dance around Yugi and his cards whilst just singing a YMCA song and emote on Yugi once he defeats him. Captain Ginyu is just built different, and even 3 gods, Exodia and an arsenal of spells and traps would just not save my man from getting ragdolled by a flamboyant space invader. And with that said, this is also my conclusion for this video. Due to the power of his cards and a bit of good RNG, like, let's not forget that, I believe Yugi could make it up to Ginyu at best and up to Dodoria or Zarbon at worst. But do keep in mind that this is obviously me just wanking off Yugi and his cards to the utmost limit. Like I said before at the beginning of this video, this is more so just me having fun, and this video is definitely not meant to be taken super seriously, because I just don't think you can make a serious versus video between a guy like Yugi and a guy from Dragon Ball. It's just not really a realistic comparison, but I still wanted to see if I could come up with a fun way to give him a fighting chance, if you know what I mean. But I am very interested in you guys' opinion on this possible scenario. Did I maybe miss some cards that would help him get further? Did I maybe miss some other things that would aid him? Hell, do you think Yugi can just throw a mean right hook? Like, just let me know in the comments down below. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the precious time out of your day to watch my videos. I really do appreciate you all so much that you actually want to watch my content. Like, I never expected to get nearly 6,000 subscribers, but hey, here I am. Please also consider subscribing to my channel to never miss another video ever again, and leave a like if you enjoyed yourself today. Stay safe, keep healthy, and I will see you all again in the next video. Peace out.